see, that is this notice here. The UNC has announced officially that the election of officers of the National Congress of the United National Congress will be held on Saturday, March 24th, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. A listing of the venues to be announced, they say is going to come at a later date. However, they have not stated how much later. As you know, the election of officers of the United National Congress is by on the basis of one man, one vote of every single financial member of the party. So that being the case in the past, what has happened is that the elections are held in each constituency to facilitate voters from Toko and so on and so forth, and from Cedrus or whatever. And so they have not announced the polling stations as yet. They have, however, given certain deadlines, and the deadlines given that the registration of members for the purpose of election would be February 18th. It appears to me by what they mean by that is that if you wish to become a member of the party for the purpose of voting, you have until February 18th to do that. Availability of nomination papers, they have announced, nomination forms are available at the UNC headquarters. While on that, I would like to add that several of our members have gone there for membership forms and are unable to get them. They are restricting them to 10 and 20 and so on, so that if you don't belong to their group and you wish to make members, you cannot. We're just pointing these things out so that they will correct them in time. They have also announced that the receipt of applications for objections, corrections to membership listing is March 3rd. Now this election is on March 24th, and there are they have said, about 55,000 members in this party. So that between March 3rd and some closing date, you have got to check a list of 50-something thousand members to determine who is rightly or wrongly on the list, and whether they're entitled to vote or not, and whether you, who should be on the list, are not there and therefore not entitled to vote. Nomination of candidates, submission of nomination papers to prospective candidates is March 4th, and returning of nomination papers to prospective candidates is March the 7th. I imagine what they are saying is that if you wish to be a candidate, you have to send them your form for them to approve it. That's the only thing that could mean. And that nomination day, the deadline for submission of nomination papers to the internal election is on March 11th. You would notice how close they are putting this to March 24th, and I think you will draw your own conclusions from that. The deadline for submission of application for special voters is March 12th, and that special voting will take place at the RNC complex. First of all, who are the special voters? We don't know. And will they be voting what? Coming here to vote where? At the party headquarters? By the people who control the party and want to get back? According to our information, the present executive has set up an elections committee. And the election committee comprises most of the persons who were on the election committee that stole the last elections. Generation Next is insisting that an independent committee be set up to conduct the elections, or alternatively, that representatives of Generation Next, that group which is contesting the elections, should be on the elections committee. We also insist on a list to be published before the elections indicating who are the special voters. And Generation Next is insisting that their representatives be present at the voting of these special voters, and that the ballot box containing their ballots be placed in the custody of the police or an agreed independent agent to prevent the possibility of these boxes being stuffed with fake ballots between then and the counting of the ballots on election day, which I imagine is going to be some weeks after March 24th. The dates that have been announced are clearly oppressive and intend to frustrate and deter those opposed to the present executive from contesting the elections. But we shall not be deterred. We shall go ahead with these elections, if only so that the country can see what they are dealing with this PP government and those who are strangling the UNC. We are convinced that it is extremely important that the party extricates itself from the clutches of the national executive of the party. As you all realize, that most of the ministers are now also officers of the party, so that the government has the party in its grip like that. How can the party speak to the government when the ministers themselves are officers of the national executive? What we are trying to do is that we are trying to extricate the party from this position so that the party will be at arm's length and be able to speak to the government. I want to make it absolutely sure that this is not a fight against the PP government. This is a fight for the PP government, because we believe that if they continue in this way, the PNM is sure to win the next elections. And it is the duty, therefore, of the party to push the government on the right path. And that is why it is necessary to take over the party. And that is what we are doing. As I said, we are extremely, we are convinced that it is extremely important that we extricate the party executive from the clutches of the government. With the government controlling the national executive of the party, there is no way that the party can, especially its rank and file, can speak to the government about the failure to keep their promises with the people, for example. That is why the people now have a choice. Instead of having to burn tires, you would notice that the only way the people, the rank and file of the population, including the rank and file of the party, can speak to this government is to block the road, burn tires, and that sort of thing, because they have blocked all channels of speaking to them through the party. So people have no choice but to burn tires, block the roads with demonstration in order to get the attention of the government, the PP government. That should not be. The party should be in an independent position to be able to speak to the government at arm's length. So we are saying that no minister or official of the government should be a member of the national executive. If we do not contest the elections, we will be giving our membership no choice at all. But by contesting these elections and putting up our own slate, we are giving the party a choice to determine whether ministers should be members of the national executive. The only way this can happen, as I say, that they should not be, is by contesting elections as we are doing. We know that we cannot compete with the government to the extent of the resources that they have in this battle. We are aware of that. But we have the confidence that the human resource is greater than all the bribery and all the tricks and all the advertisements and all the parties and all the giveaway of hampers and pampers and what have you. We are therefore calling upon the population to join the struggle. We need volunteers to man the polling stations on election day. We need funds to print pamphlets, jerseys, election paraphernalia, and so on. The campaign, I want to tell you, has already begun. We have held several cottage meetings and will soon commence our mass public meetings. We need the help of all those who believe in what we are trying to do. We are calling for volunteers who will man the polling stations on election day. We welcome volunteers to campaign in each constituency. We shall appreciate your help because in this onerous task which we have undertaken. As you will realize, what we have begun is we have begun organizing for this campaign on the basis of constituencies. That is to say, in each constituency, we are setting up a management committee of that constituency. And we are hoping that the management committee of that constituency will set up subcommittees in each electoral district. Now, the object is, of course, to ensure that this elections is free and fair and free from fear. You may ask, why are we setting up the organization on the basis of constituencies and polling divisions? Is that not a political or a representation of or a manifestation of the political organizations, constituencies, electoral division? The answer is yes. And the answer is, of course, that if they steal these elections, we shall not only go to court, but we shall be in a position to have already set the foundations to contest the elections on our own, if needs be. We know that in the last elections of the National Executive, people from other parties voted. I think you're all aware of that. People from other parties voted in the elections. That's part of how they stole it. And in order to prevent that, we are asking them to publish their membership list immediately so that we can compare their list with the list of the members of other political parties to ensure that members of other political parties are not voting in these elections. As you know, if they do, that will be contrary to the law and the elections will be null and void. Because the rules of the UNC is that you cannot be a member of another political party. Once you join another political party, you are automatically expelled from the UNC. That's according to their constitution. No UNC list has yet been published. We do have in our possession, however, several lists, or the list of several constituencies of the other political parties, so that we shall be able to compare them and ensure that these elections are free and fair. But we need sufficient time to do so. We are going to have to deal with over 50,000 entries. We have already begun the screening of candidates. Candidates to fill our slate, the slate of Generation Next, at the next elections, internal elections of the party. We shall continue screening on every Sunday afternoon until nomination day. We ask that those who are interested to contact Generation Next at the Rienzi complex. Anyone wishing to join in the struggle or to assist in any way can please contact us at telephones 636-3507, 636-6070, or send an email to basdeopandefoundation@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and I'm open to any questions you may wish to ask.
Mr. Pandey?
Yep.
You mentioned the selection, the screening process.
Yes.
What are some of the criteria that a candidate needs to explain the screening process?
Obviously, you can only fill your slate from the best people you have, and that will be the criteria. The criteria will be the best people. And in choosing the best people, dedication is most important. But people are dedicated to the struggle. They are not selfish and all they want is office. We hope that those people are not on the slate. We hope that they will be competent and capable, willing to work hard, and willing to carry on a fight in the interest of the nation as opposed to in the interest of themselves. As you know, I shall not be contesting any office.
You mentioned some mass public meetings coming up. Do you have any idea of specific date?
Mass what?
Public meetings.
Those are to be arranged. What we are doing, we're trying to get the constituencies organized first, and the constituencies themselves will be calling the public meetings. So we'll set a whole list, and we shall certainly let you know what they are.
So you said How has the campaign been going so far this year?
Campaign is going.
Cottage meetings.
Campaign has begun very well indeed. As a matter of fact, on Saturday last, we held a meeting here of the activists that we have so far, and they came from several constituencies. And it is upon the basis of that meeting and the list that we have of the persons who subscribe their willingness to serve that we are establishing the constituency organizing committees.
Have some of your former supporters, are they coming back to you? Some of the folks, some of them might have left.
Well, they have supporters of who? Because I'm not looking for supporters of Prime, I'm looking for supporters of the party.
You would have had faithfuls, people who,
yes, a lot of them. We get a lot of telephone calls. We are receiving a lot of email. On the telephone, people are calling all the time and willing to assist. We are setting up a database to keep track of them and to call upon them. People are offering their premises for holding a constituency meeting. All of that is being put together, and that's how we shall continue.
Mr. Pandey, how's your health in terms of
my health?
Getting back on a camp?
Okay, let me tell you something. I remember after I had open heart surgery, and I came back from London, a group of people over the airport to see me, and they asked me that very question. Mr. Pandey, how is your health? My reply at that time was, well, let's put it this way. If you see me and a lion fighting, feel sorry for the lion. All I can say now is to repeat that question, but merely to say that I hope the lion has some false teeth.
Mr. Pandey, any reaction?
My health is good. As a matter of fact, I had several checkups last week, medical checkups, and the purpose of that was to ensure that I will be able to render the assistance that I have promised Generation Next. Generation Next is not mine. I am the advisor to Generation Next, and Generation Next consists of a group of people who wants to take back their party. And yes, ma'am, to answer your question, these are faithfuls of the party as opposed to loyalists of Pastor Pandey or any other fool.
Mr. Pandey, do you know about any known reaction from those partnership against Generation Next? Anything was said to you?
Nothing was said to me personally, but we noticed from the blogs that the government has set in motion its forces to destabilize what we are doing, to frustrate us, and so on and so forth. We noticed that, but we expect that. In a war, you mustn't expect your enemies to hug you and kiss you.
Well, it seems that Generation Next is a drive for an influx of fresh blood into the UNC.
Yes, it is.
Would you be
an influx of fresh blood into the leadership of the UNC as well. And would I be something?
Would you be open to anyone from the current executives jumping ship, so to say, into Generation Next?
No. We are asking people who wish to be nominated as candidates are free to let us know, and we shall examine them. I don't know who is on the present National Executive. If they are ministers, however, the answer will certainly be they can't fight an arse late, because our whole point is to prevent the party from being controlled by the ministers of government so that the party can't speak to them. So, officials of the government, for example, Mr. Dave Tanku is the secretary of the party, but Mr. Dave Tanku is in full-time employment at the office of the Prime Minister. Who do you think he's going to work for? As General Secretary of the party, who do you think he's going to work for? Generation Next? That sort of thing cannot go on. That is unacceptable.
Is there anybody?
Sorry, ladies first, ladies first. Yeah.
Is there anybody within the TP who would be giving you quiet support, who may have, maybe not want to call you, anybody would have called you and, quietly inside there, who probably would have been, you don't want to say loyalist or faithful to you in the past, who would have gone there and now might be quietly saying,
there are many of them whom I have met. They don't speak to me otherwise at parties, functions. And I've met them and they said that they agree with what I'm doing. But the person who spoke to me, one of them was, but you shouldn't say no ministers should contest. The person who was speaking to me was obviously a minister. Okay? So yes, there are many people who believe that what we are doing is right, that the party must extricate itself from the government and be able to speak to it. And yes, they are supporting. some of them are supporting secretly, because as you know, I believe that Trinidad and Tobago has now become a society living in fear. People are afraid of victimization. For example, if you publish an article in the newspapers that they don't like, they will raid your office. I see that they have raided the office of the Newsday. I'm surprised. I thought Newsday was in their pocket. But it doesn't matter whether you're in the front pocket or the back pocket. It appears that they will not tolerate anybody criticizing them. They will not do that. As I say, people are frightened of victimization. I don't think this society was ever more frightened of victimization than it is now. And therefore there are many people who will help us but will not come forward. We are telling them, don't let a little 10 days and a little secret bother you, because they will not know how you're voting anyway.
Mr. Pandey,
Sir.
People are complaining that we wanted change, but now we get an exchange. Is that your view as well?
More than that. We voted for change. We not only got exchange, we got small change and short change. And everybody tells you that we expected this government to perform. We don't want to move the government. That's not what we're doing. We are saying we want the party to be so strong that it can tell the government where it is going wrong. It can tell them that there's too much corruption. It can tell them that there is too much nepotism. It can tell them that they can't continue the way they're continuing. Otherwise, the PNM will win the next elections, and we can't take that on our back for another, even 5 years.
The population continues to ask the question, what happens to Calder Heart?
What happened to Calder Heart? He's probably carrying on some very beautiful telephone conversations with the members of the government and living happily in Miami or wherever it is he lives. They will do nothing because we have no change. They voted, they campaigned so heavily against Calder Heart and the corruption in Unedited, and not a single thing, nearly 2 years apart, and not a single thing has been done about the enormous corruption that took place in Unedited.
What was the last update you got about Mr. Manning's health?
Last
update about Mr. Manning's health. Have you been in contact with him?
No, I went to see him as it was reported. And when I saw him, of course, he had just had the stroke. It was the same a few hours after that he had the stroke. And at that time, he had an oxygen mask on his face and so on and so forth. I understand that he has been improving from what I read in the newspapers, and of course I wish him very speedy recovery and return to his work, normal life. Oh, I want to say one other thing. I see that the government is boasting that they are paying for Mr. Manning's medical bill. I want to tell them that they are doing Mr. Manning no favor. That is Mr. Manning's right. A cabinet note has been passed which said that prime ministers, former prime ministers, former presidents' medical bill will be paid because they've given so much of their lives to the politics and so on, and they probably bad health when they leave. And that is a decision of a cabinet decision that was passed, I think, during the time that I was prime minister. So they are doing Mr. Manning's no favor. It is Mr. Manning's right to have his medical bills paid. Right. You usually ask questions. What's the matter with you this morning? You are so satisfied. You are so satisfied with this press conference.
You were so detailed, Mr. Pandey, that you read my mind. You answered every question I wanted to ask.
Nah, I sure they have some that you want me to ask, but I tell you what, when a fellow's leaving, ask me. Because I know what they will be. I'm only joking. Listen, this is not an attack on the media. I'm only joking with you.
Yeah, well, you was mentioning earlier about the attack on the media. You wanted to say anything?
I think it's atrocious. Every time I speak about the media, Mr. Pandey, they say, Mr. Pandey, and you had a quarrel with the media. Let me tell the country now, and for once and for all, that the only problem I had with the media was that they were not entitled to publish lies, half-truths, and innuendos. And when I said that, a certain media mogul, whose name I will not call, said that the media has an untrammeled right to publish. And I asked, even lies, half-truths and innuendos? And the answer was yes. And that was the battle. As a matter of fact, I refused at the time, our government refused to sign the Treaty of Chapultepec. Is that it? Is that the name? Chapultepec. And the reason is we wanted them to include in that the media has no right to publish lies, half-truths and innuendos. And when they did not, we refused to sign. That was my fight with them. And the Constitution contains provision that the media shall be free. Therefore, not only is the government entitled to comment on the media is entitled to comment on the government. That's all right. But when you terrorize them by raiding their offices, by attacking their journalists, and or rushing up to their office from after having a haircut into the studio and knocking over some of the guys and so on, that is unacceptable. So I think it is totally unacceptable that the government should raid at the offices. What have they gone there to find out? Who gave news to the journalists? That's not their right. That's not their right at all. They must use other means, not raid the offices of the journalists and the media. This is an atrocious act, and it is an indication that this government intends to rule by fear. That's the significant thing.
But Mr. Pandey?
Yes, darling.
Mr. Ramlogan was on CTV's morning program this morning, and he said the government had no idea what they were doing. He didn't give any orders to do that.
As a matter of fact, I think the government has no idea about anything. And that's the whole problem. The government doesn't have any idea about anything. Haven't they set up institutions? Haven't they set up organizations? Have they not got a reporting position? Who reports to who in this government? Apparently nobody reports to anybody. Everybody doing their own thing. So from the time anything happens, Prime Minister, Attorney General, we don't know nothing about that, you know. Who is running this country? Is it on autopilot? That's my answer to that.
Mr. Pandey, any views on the current death penalty debate?
Has it taken place or is it taking
Well,
place? I am not sure.
No,
I am not sure.
official debate, but just the back and forth between government and the opposition.
I see that the government is asking the opposition to put forward legislation of their own. Nothing could be more ridiculous. That is not the function of the opposition, as I understand it. As a matter of fact, the opposition has no opportunity to table legislation in the parliament. The standing orders of parliament does not allow for it. It is the function of the government, who has all the resources, all the legal expertise to prepare law and bring it to the parliament for debate. And when it's being debated, the opposition has its right to say what it believes, either support it, reject it, criticize it, whatever they will. That's their job. But their job is not to provide, to submit the legislation. That's not their job at all. That's the job of the government with all the resources. When I was in the opposition, for example, the PNM used to tell me the same thing. So that's it. No change. No change. The PNM used to tell me the same thing. Well, Mr. Pandey, why you don't bring legislation and so on? What resources does the office of the opposition have to be able to formulate legislation? None. So they have the Law Reform Commission. All these highly skilled organizations which will allow the government to prepare legislation in accordance with its own policy. That is their job. What they're asking the opposition to do, to prepare legislation in accordance with the opposition's policy? No, that doesn't make sense.
And your personal views on the death penalty?
I beg your pardon?
Your personal views on the death penalty?
What importance is my personal views on the death penalty? I've argued that. I've argued it over and over while I was there, while I was not there. I think the law needs to be changed. For example, I do not think that all murders, or murders as defined by the Constitution, should carry the same penalty. I think people who are arguing about the death penalty do not know the definition of murder as it obtains in our law at the moment. And if they did, I'll just give you an example. A man comes home. I know this is one that everybody will understand because it's close to their heart. A man comes home and finds his wife with a lover. And he hits him a blow with a baseball bat or whatever, and the man dies. In law, that is murder. Another case of murder. A gangster breaks into your house, you're asleep, slashes you and up and so on, to rob you or as a hit job, and kills you. That too is murder. The punishment for both is the death penalty. You answer the question yourself, whether the law should remain in that way. In America, they have sorted this problem out, and they have degrees of murder. First degree, second degree, third degree murder. And in those states that still have the death penalty is reserved for only degree 1 murder, first degree murder. So there's need to reform the whole law. There is need for that. So one cannot say, am I in favor or am I not in favor? In favor of what? I don't know what they're introducing. In any case, I saw someone was having a petition, and as I said, I don't know, had he got 1 million signatures, what he would have done with it. He has 1 million signatures. The only thing he could have done with it was to go to the cabinet and say, here I have 1 million signatures to do so and so and so and so. He will have to take it to the very cabinet that he sits on every Wednesday. Why did he take it to them in the first place? And so that, look, I am going to get a petition, and if I get 10,000 signatures, will you all change the law? That sort of thing. But no. And the petition is withdrawn. It's because people are not thinking these things through. It is not a simple matter, the death penalty. Not simple at all. Yeah. Any more? If not, I want to thank you very much for coming, and hope that you'll publish the truth. No lies, no half-truths, and no innuendos. Okay, guys? Thanks a lot. Ladies, thank you.